Trump tries to whitewash Charlottesville. Everyone in America knows what Trump said after white supremacist rallies and murdered a woman in that Virginia city. Now the president's got a new defense for his good people on both sides comment. We'll tell you what he said today and why you shouldn't believe it. Plus, gay rights in America, they've settled in stone, right? Wrong. Turns out you can still lose your job just for being gay in America. The Supreme Court could make that, believe it or not, that act of discrimination the law of the land. Tonight, the fearful reaction from the LGBTQ community. Plus, President Trump told Americans to get their shots today, that in response to the measles outbreak, this after years of being among the most prominent anti-vaxxers in America. We've got the tweets to prove it. All that plus, we're going to examine why the U.S. has become one of the most stressed out nations in the world. And trust me, it's not an opinion here. They've got the data to prove it. We'll have that coming up. Plus, in a few moments, a moving farewell to an American hero, all thanks to a young woman and the spirit of service to our nation. Evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. I find myself saying this often, but it's been a long week. And we begin tonight with yet another jaw-dropping attempt at a Jedi mind trick from President Trump. That is, he tries, and I stress the word tries, to rewrite history, and recent history at that. After perhaps the darkest moment of his presidency, that's saying something, his comments after the deadly riot from the white supremacists in Charlottesville. Now, I know you remember what he said. It was just 2 years ago. But just in case, here is the sound from our president.
You had some very bad people in that group, but you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. I think there's blame on both sides, and I have no doubt about it, and you don't have any doubt about it either.
Of course, the vast majority of Americans had a lot of doubt about it. And we get to today. Joe Biden yesterday singled out the comments you heard as the rationale behind the launch of his presidential campaign. The president, he was asked about what he said as he headed to his helicopter address to the NRA. Here is Trump's attempt to rewrite history.
I was talking about people that went because they felt very strongly about the monument to Robert E. Lee, a great general. Whether you like it or not, he was one of the great generals. I've spoken to many generals here, right at the White House, and many people thought of the generals, they think that he was maybe their favorite general. People were there protesting the taking down of the monument of Robert E. Lee. Everybody knows that.
Again, no, not everyone knows that at all, because the president never made it clear what he was referring to when he made those remarks, and he never bothered to clean it up. But just put aside for a moment that General Lee, he was among the greatest traitors in American history, that he committed treason by taking up arms against the United States, and he led the Confederate Army into the deadliest war in American history, all in the defense of slavery. He was, at the end of it, a white supremacist. So forget all that. For a moment, I want you to consider this. If you were accused, you personally, you were accused of defending these people, aiding white supremacists, backing a group of Nazi sympathizers who killed a woman in Charlottesville, I gotta think that any of you watching, with whoever you voted for, you'd scream yourself hoarse trying to tell people you are not sympathizing with the scum of humanity. You'd want as much distance between yourself and the toxic group that you see on your screen as possible. Well, our president never did that. Instead, he did what he has done so many times after saying something unthinkable. He hemmed and he hawed so that the parts of his base that cheered on Charlottesville wouldn't get upset. While trying to have it both ways, claims now he was talking about something completely different. But anybody expecting anything different from this president hasn't been paying attention. His own words have been graded more generously than any other president in American history. I'm talking about a giant curve here, and it's a dangerous one at that. How many times have we heard his defenders say, well, what the president really meant to say was, or I interpret what he meant to say like this? Will this president ever be held accountable for the actual words that come out of a 72-year-old man's mouth? Now, I want to get into this now with Andrew Whitman, our senior political correspondent, because, again, facts almost be damned in these conversations. The rally was organized by white supremacists. It wasn't that organically this turned into something that no one thought of. This wasn't just about the monuments, not to do a history lesson since we already did it on who Robert E. Lee was, but a president of the United States who today talked about a coup that never happened against him. He continues to defend someone who led a coup against America, and he defended white supremacists, and he thinks we're all so stupid that instead of leaving it alone, he tries to say that we're all lying for quoting him directly.
You know, even if you give him the benefit of the doubt, and at this point, there's absolutely no reason to give him the benefit of the doubt because this has happened so many times. But let's give him the benefit of the doubt, and maybe he really was referencing the Robert E. Lee statue. Why didn't he say that 2 years ago? Why wasn't the next line out of his mouth, you know I'm talking about the statue, right? I mean, why didn't he say that the day after, when this was the biggest story in the country for a week or 2 weeks after Charlottesville happened? And you're absolutely right. We've seen this time and time again where he says something that is grotesquely insensitive, that is a dog whistle, if not an actual audible whistle, to his base and to the furthest reaches on his base. And his defenders come in and say, well, no, what he really meant was this. Instead, he's a 72-year-old man. Yes, he's not a career politician, but he's been in the public eye my entire life, you know, since the late 1970s. He's not a guy who's afraid of being on camera or seems at a loss for words.
Yeah, I know you know this one. I'm not sure our audience does. We all remember the Access Hollywood tape. Of course you do. And you remember what the president said specifically about where he grabbed women here. Forget about whether permission or not, and he thought it was really funny. His greatest regret out of this, I know you know this, but I don't know if the public follow this. Reportedly, he knew that wasn't playing well in the media. And the only one who told him he was going to get through it, because a lot of people thought he should have resigned or basically dropped his candidacy at that point, including, you know, I should mention his first chief of staff, Reince Priebus and others, was Jared Kushner. Kushner goes, people know who you are, they'll just basically put this in the wash, and it turned out to be right. But Trump's regret wasn't what he said, it's that he didn't deny it. Now you would say, well, how possibly can somebody deny something where you have the video or certainly the audio of hearing him on the bus and then walk out with Billy Bush? But that was a window then to what he thinks of all of us now. Just like we all watched what happened in Helsinki, where him, shadowed by Putin, said the things he did, and then claimed later on that everybody was misquoting him, even though it was on live TV.
I meant to say the word wouldn't instead of would or something.
As if that changed the whole thing. But to me, the part that galls me is not him anymore. You know what he is. It's baked in the cake. I don't have any expectations. It took me longer than others maybe to get there, but it takes too much to shock me. But what about we, the people? I mean, to excuse anything and everything, to give him the benefit of the doubt when he hasn't earned it once, that's the part. He thinks we're all dumb. And God help me, the people still give him a pass.
Every other politician has to be precise about their words. Even Kamala Harris, talking about, you know, voting rights for people in prison, corrected the record the next day. This guy doesn't do that. Instead, he lets people interpret it as they will.
That people will look at this as the new playbook. Deny, 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 and then lie, lie, lie.
Not if we have anything to say about it.
Let's hope so. All right, now you go from there to here. I'm shifting gears here in a big way from a president who seems to obviously have no respect for traditions or sacrifice for that matter and customs, and he stands to benefit often or too often in doing so. And I want to think about that to a man who was on the opposite side of the spectrum, a man I'm sure the vast majority of you never have even heard of. He upheld principles in the true spirit of devotion and heroism. And I would think our president and all of us could learn more than a little bit from this man's life story. He was a decorated World War II veteran, a Marine, a hero, and he was remembered today at a special funeral in Westchester County, New York, just to the north of New York City. It's all thanks to a young woman who befriended this member of the greatest generation. Our friend Ray Ramundi files his package.
Under gloomy skies and with full military honors, a tribute to a decorated veteran like no other. The casket of Bob Graham, draped with the American flag, carried into St. Elizabeth Ann Seton Church. This special tribute, all due to this woman, who made sure he wasn't memorialized alone.
I'm amazed at how many people came out for Bob, but then again, I'm not. I mean, he was such a special person. His life was so incredible, and his story really spoke to so many people's hearts.
Bob Graham died 2 weeks ago at the age of 97, outliving his entire family, including his beloved wife of 60 years, Rosie. Beth Regan, who befriended Bob while volunteering at a Yorktown Heights nursing home, set forth a mission to make sure the decorated World War II vet's life was celebrated for the world to see. And with this social media post, her wish came true.
So this is really a touching tribute and a send-off for an incredible man.
Strangers from near and far saluting the 97-year-old. Graham earned bronze and silver stars for his service in the Pacific, a member of the elite Marine Raiders. Fellow veterans, police, and community members overwhelmed with emotion and American pride.
To show my respect to all the veterans, especially Bob today, and to the young lady that organized this, it empowers me to want to volunteer, to be present in people's lives.
2 weeks ago, many believed the church here would be empty, but through the power of social media and the outpour of love for those who serve to protect America's freedom, the halls of this church were filled to capacity.
It's outstanding. It's chilling to see the American people stand for someone they didn't even know. It's quite impactful, and that's typical of what we do in times like this.
And the special tribute ending with the honorable flag folding ceremony handed to the young woman responsible for it all. Bob Graham was laid to rest here at Woodlawn Cemetery in the Bronx. Beth says she will visit his gravesite often, but she says his legacy as a serviceman to America, the Marines, and as a devoted and dedicated husband will last forever. At the Woodlawn Cemetery in the Bronx, Ray Mundy, FiOS 1 News.
Thank you, Ray. And if anyone wonders, well, why is this local story fitting in? I find myself talking about things on the national level that can be more than a little off-putting, and you wonder about the greatest generation often and how far we've come or gone from there. I want to remind you of stories, not just of that generation, but people even still today remembering it. Okay. So with that, we will return back to national politics after this break here. And we're going to talk about a story that I frankly thought was in the rearview mirror. Being discriminated because of your sexuality. And believe it or not, the Supreme Court's taking up a case here that could actually make that the law of the land.